everyone! Thank you for joining us on the second day of the ASEAN International Furniture and Furnishings Show VX. For our first session today, our speakers will talk about the F&B Outlook in the new lifestyle. To moderate this panel discussion and to introduce our panelists, please welcome Mr. Merril Yu, CEO of YNS 1847.
All right, good morning, everybody. We're very happy to introduce our distinguished panel. Let's start off with Chef Chele. Chele is a Spanish-born chef and owner for a restaurant that is highly acclaimed in Manila. And his restaurant has also been featured in among the top 30 restaurants in Asia 2 years running. Welcome, Chele. It's nice to have you with us. All right. Our next panelist is Kenji Salz, and Kenji is originally from Hawaii. He's a longtime Four Seasons alumni, as executive chef, having worked in Hawaii, California, Indonesia, Middle East, as well as opening up the Venetian in Macau as executive chef. He's had his consulting practice in Asia, based out of both Shanghai and Indonesia, until recently moving back to the United States, where he's based out of Tucson. And he's now in the recruiting business and has a very active practice. Welcome, Kenji. Somock Inthavong is another Four Seasons alum, originally from Laos, a Lausanne graduate. And he started off his food and beverage career with me actually years ago at the Four Seasons Clifton, San Francisco, and has worked extensively in food and beverage, rising to operations in Indonesia and Thailand. And actually his last postings in hotel he was general manager for Ducit's new concept hotel in Chiang Mai. And now Somock runs his consulting practice from Vientiane, Laos. Welcome, Somock. Nice to have you here. Last but not least, Andrej Wisniewski joins us, a good friend. Andrej is second generation hotelier and restaurateur. He's CEO of the Raintree Group in Manila, and his portfolio includes among 28 restaurant concepts and food courts, as well as 5-star hotels. So welcome, Andrej. It's nice to have you with us, and welcome to all our speakers. All right, so let's get things started. It's been a year since the pandemic really affected everybody. And I guess prior to pandemic, food and beverage concepts were really mushrooming all around the world in Asia. And basically, people were just climbing over each other with new concepts. Well, then the pandemic hit. And we've since seen people that have not made it, people that have made it, and there are people also that have flourished. So in each of your own markets and countries, what have you seen in terms of the lessons learned for the pandemic, in terms of assessing 2020? Chele, why don't you get us started?
Okay, hello. Good morning to everybody. Well, there are so many things we can discuss, because this can change the mindset into everybody. But I will ask one question, no? Maybe things went too fast before the pandemic, and right now it gives us a breath to really think twice, That you mentioned, Merril, it was opening, concepts left and right. I think the F&B industry in general, it was not very sustainable in terms of business. I don't know how many people it was making money. Of course, it's different to have, a restaurant in a resort that you needed for your in-house guests than to have, a restaurant, out of a, big property, let's say. So I think, this is really a time, to think and re-escalate, where we are. Hopefully we have the time, and the opportunity to do it. But definitely some other questions that, I would like, to see is, probably things haven't changed forever, in many other ways. And definitely now the behavior of people is changed, to go to a restaurant or right now it's something like experience. It's the only way that you can socialize, I believe. And I will also say that, maybe, and I heard, in California, some people was checking about this. Even it's more safe, if you get together, go to a restaurant where they have all the protocols in place, that maybe get in a house or maybe in a condo or maybe in a place that you cannot control, that safety measurements. So we can talk about, how many things have been changed. And I think, for the next year or few more years, it's still going to be a challenge. We don't know how it's going to be the vaccination. We don't know if the vaccination is going to be seasonal. So anyways, let's start the conversation, no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Kenji, what about from your side of the world now? What did you see?
Well, actually, I was planning to move back from Indonesia around February, so that got delayed, needless to say. So I did witness the heavy part of COVID onslaught between March and, say, June. When I left in Indonesia, was a bloodbath. And then I came back and I started training with the national recruiting firm, where I get a very, very clear picture as I speak to all level executive to assistant manager down daily, every day, people in the industry. And from full service, elevated dining to QSR. So what did I see? Well, I saw in Indonesia, they already have a super, super vital delivery service. So they did keep open a lot of delivery, and it just continued on. They have this company called Gojek and a few others, which very cheaply deliver food. So those things boomed even more as they went into lockdown mode. I've seen one really prominent restaurant group really be forward thinking and just close all of their mall restaurants and just basically declare bankruptcy immediately ahead of the curve, and said they're not going to open up again for another year and a half. So they cut all their expenses, boom, out. Other people just sort of withered away. If it was a inside dining type of operation, if they didn't have a huge war chest, they're gone. Then I came to US, and what's very interesting, since I do work with a national recruiting firm, there's 130 offices all over the States, who I talk to many of them every day. So what I found was the company had 1,500 open jobs in February, which is a lot for 130 people to work on. And just before I came, there was down to like 300. But the company pivoted as they had been specializing in more elevated concepts, recruiting for and engaging with those types of clients. They pivoted, went to QSR. QSR, which is quick service restaurant, fast food, fast casual, drive-through especially, just boomed. I mean, there's one Cane's in Costa Mesa was doing 14 million last year. I mean, amazing numbers. So QSR is booming. So we have a lot of new clients in QSR. It is just the case where inside dining in many of the key states where most innovative generation of concepts is, like LA, New York, those areas are just opening up again. Maybe 100,000 companies may have closed over the last period, but I believe they will come back. And right now it's really ramping up. It's getting crazy. You can't keep track of all the jobs.
Interesting. Okay. Andrej, what about back to Manila again? What are your perspectives on last year and where it's going?
Yeah, I think it's been a very interesting year, and also interesting what Chele and Kenji just said. It really depends, I guess, on the market that you're in, and within that market, what are your specific types of food and beverage that you're doing? As you said, Merril, some people really, flourished, some, and then a lot of others really did that kind of wither away. Not many had the foresight to just kind of throw in the towel at the start and go into hibernation. So I look forward here that we get to the point that the US is getting to right now, where we see this boom and this big return. Certainly, I have heard from friends in other countries like China, when they had the virus under control, that it came back quickly and strongly when they were doing that. For the Philippines, we're lagging behind a bit because we've had some of the most severe restrictions for COVID until now. And it looks like it's going to continue for at least another 12 months. So everybody here is adapting still. I know there were a number of things people did from the start. Everybody sort of went through the panic and shock of people who were running restaurants to try to adapt and get your operating costs down to a manageable level. and then implement the safety protocols and all the things we were learning, as they came along. But I think by now a lot of people have done that already, and have also pivoted to try to do other parts of food and beverage, which they probably were not doing before, trying to get into home delivery and some things that we're not particularly expert at. But I can imagine right now, everybody really is, though, just trying to get into consumers' homes. And it's a great competition how to do that, because restaurant dining here is there's only limited market for that. So now everybody is trying to figure it out. Chele has actually done a great job from what I've seen, trying to pivot and move towards that direction. But there's a great competition. Everybody from your grandmother to your former staff are now offering food delivery and other things to get into people's houses. So for me, the big question is how to get that attention, and how to use technology, in fact, to get you there, aside from just your product or the normal things that you do in the course of a restaurant. Lots of food delivery apps, for example, have popped up, and they're sort of the necessary evil for people in the business, sort of like OTAs for hotels. But I think there's still a lot to be done for technology and data. Most restaurant people are not in control of their own data, so we don't know enough about our customers. And if we did, I think there's a lot of potential there for how we could get food into people's houses. And I realized too that aside from the restaurant experience that people are used to, people really like good digital experiences, good customized, personalized interactions online. And that's been a challenge. Most restaurant people who were not from big companies are developing these things on their own. So how to make that, how to create these personalized digital experiences that will grab your attention, make you order from you versus somebody else. That's another trend I think it's going to develop further in the next year, and it's probably wide open for companies that develop that.
Yeah, that's true. Thanks, Andrej. Somock, what about in your part of the world, between, say, what's it like in Thailand, Laos, Vietnam? What did you see?
Well, in Laos, Thailand, in this region, I mean, I'd start with Laos, where I'm based. If I think in general, if everyone suffer, of course, of what happened last year and still suffer, I mean, the hope is, of course, this vaccination rollout that give the light of the tunnel. I think what people learn here is mainly, especially in Laos, where it's a small country, so the COVID is managed okay. There's no major, no death yet. Not only 5 active cases. But the borders are closed, and then the business are down, no tourists, and this kind of thing, right? So the emphasis for the operator is more on emphasis on safety and sanitation. You'll see a very small operator now. They have to have a sink, and soap, and this kind of thing that never exists before. You will go to some kind of they have to have that, and to build some confidence for the customers to come and to patronize them. So I think in the right way, it's a good way for these operators to be more focused, aware that they need to improve the safety hygiene. So that I think will carry on after COVID, and that's good news as well. What we see as well is, because of the border being closed, there's an increase in demand for local food. Laos depend a lot on Thailand and Vietnam on a lot of produce like seafood and this kind of thing. But all vegetable, herbs, and any chicken and all this duck and this farm, there's a lot of business opening up, and I think we'll carry on with because of the demand for locally grown and sourced ingredients, because of the cost. This is for cost. Because of the cost, of course, and every operator wants to be leaner and wants to find ways of being more cost efficient in running their business. So obviously they streamline menus, they source locally, and the consumers also are looking for add value experience. And there's no doubt that fine dining and all this buffet for the time being are really, really slow, and being very affected by this crisis. So yeah, people are finding a way of, of course, using online delivery business and this kind of thing. and trying to get more, adjust to the situation. And again, if when they reopen the restaurant, they will stress on health and safety again to make sure that they comply to the guidelines and have a positive impact to the customer experience. So that's what's happening here. Two things that I've noticed that really also are making an impact, and I think will continue, is the cashless payment, and like QR code payment, PayPal, all this. I mean, QR code payment in Laos has been over the past few months increased tremendously. I mean, you can find some very small operator like that would never have that. Now I would pay with their mobile phone. I think that will carry on, and this is safe, it's fast, it is, it's easy to use, and I think this is going to be increasing post-COVID, that's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Somock. Kenji, I guess you have the most recent experience between having been in Asia and then moving back to the States. When Andrej talks about the digital experience, right, what do you see as the differences between where you came from in Asia and where it is in the States?
I would have to say that what they have in Indonesia with Gojek is incredibly advanced, let's say, in the marketing and the way they access. I mean, that's a huge market there, right? And somehow when you're in Indonesia, Gojek and their promotions come up and are really in your face. Like when I arrived here, I got Postmates, I got DoorDash, a few. Postmates is a bit annoying, I find, but they're really catching up, I gotta say, and fintech definitely is coming up. Although, States is a lot of card payments. It's pretty trend. In China, before I even left 4 years ago, everyone was doing what touchless QR code, WeChat payments and stuff like that. So US, I think, a little bit behind, catching up. They just use a little bit different system, but it's all moving in that direction. I almost never have cash since I'm in States, and actually I'm surprised because I thought it would be a more cash society than in Asia, but actually it's not. If I have $100, it'll last me like for super long time. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think, and speaking about where it is from what you've just spoken about in Indonesia, in the States, and in China, what about you, Chele? How do you find the digital competition for quality apps here?
If we don't have that, we don't survive. As simple as that. I was listening to everybody and I was analyzing. I think the key, I think for the future is to try to understand what is going to be the new behavior of, the new market. Mm-hmm. If we check, for example, Western countries, now that you were saying, between Western and Asian countries, we see two different complete scenarios. Yes, the Philippines were bad, but compared, for example, with Spain and in Europe, where I'm coming from, the restaurants for example, in Netherlands didn't open since October. In Spain, only outdoors and mostly time closed since October. Here, at least in the Philippines, we can operate. In the US, yes, it's peaks, but those peaks are very dangerous too, because it can give a fake sense of normality, a new wave can come, and then we don't know how to. I think even, the Western countries will behave different, because, and I think that through technology is what might give us, some kind of understanding what is going to happen next. But I think, in this sense, fear is another thing. I think I have here 3 things that, key points, maybe to analyze. That it will be behavior, culture, fear, and how you adapt to the market, the new market through technology. I think, this is our key point, to try to understand what's happening next. Because again, there are different scenarios in China, but in general in Asia, like, Thailand and also, like what he's saying, it's very few cases. How much is true? We don't know, but I have few restaurant friends in Thailand. They are operating like almost normal. Clubs are open. That happened in Europe, people don't, they don't have fear, and somehow they want to come back automatically to another peak of reality, and then another situation, another wave come. So, I think, I try to analyze, and try to say, it's a still long run to come. Vaccination, I believe, is going to come probably per, like year, like flu, until, we will come to some kind of normality. I believe it's going to be years. So until then, let's be smart. That is my, my vision, no?
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, sure.
What's really interesting development is when COVID started really hitting around March, and of course, everybody is saying what you're supposed to do, don't touch your face, wash your hands, contact service. And literally I was refreshing because what to do, right? You're stuck at home besides honeymoon with your wife, right? Is like studying hygiene, about maybe I'll get my food safety when I come to US. And it's exactly what we've been trained all the way through. Everything, don't, cross-contaminate, food contact surface, everything, hands, don't touch anything, wash your hands nonstop. But this has gone mainstream now, which is really good. Because that will stick around. That will drive an improvement in quality overall going forward. Plus the acceleration of ghost kitchen concepts, DigiPay, the various fintech delivery platforms for states have just, moved probably 10 years ahead of the pace that they were going before, because it's became completely delivery, right? Or pickup. So there is some interesting effects going forward that are going to happen. Also buffets, like we talked about one time before. Buffets is just, if you're not China where it's eradicated because they don't allow any virus in, at least for the moment, maybe you can have like before, but everyone's going to be a little bit sensitive about people breathing on food and stuff like that. So certain dynamics, business models are going to have to change.
I think Andrej, I guess, when you take a look, not so much at your own operations, but if you take a look at as a consumer, right, in Manila, and you take a look at all the other restaurants and websites, it's always been shocking for me how many of them, even to this point, a year later, don't update their websites. You can't access actually what's open, what's closed, what they're offering, how much it's going to cost. So, so in a sense that even if everybody realizes behavior protocols, you have to live by getting into people's homes, as you said, it's correct me if I'm wrong, people have really been very, on the business side, very slow to throw in a lot of resources in that direction.
Right. That's been a problem traditionally for hotels and restaurants. We were always a bit slow to adopt technology, and then just basic things like updating websites. So it's true, unfortunately.
And I think, and even the brands, even the international brands, I tease some of our common friends, right? It's that, you guys have an open restaurant, but you keep trying to go into your website. It doesn't tell you anything. They say, oh, right. Really?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's also what I mentioned earlier about the digital experience. I think everybody knows in their head, okay, we need to be on social media and whatever the platforms that work in your country. Like here, it's Instagram is the big one. To be active and produce content for that, and then fix your website, fix your Facebook page. But there's so much more to it than just that, and we just don't have that expertise. Just from my own researching, this past year, there's a lot more you should do with your website about building SEO and some of the back end things that go into the design of it. It's not just hiring an HTML expert to create something that looks pretty. There's a lot you can do to really drive traffic and find the target markets that you want. But that expertise, we need to find people to do that, and because it's not inherent in most restaurant organizations. So that's been a bit of a challenge too, getting that know-how, or even understanding that you need to get into that if we want to make this thing really work and compete for people's eyes.
Okay. Very true. Thanks, Andrej. Somock, you were mentioning earlier that that what you've seen in Laos is that there's an emphasis really on local foods, and obviously with local foods there's a pricing consideration that local foods generally are always much cheaper comfort foods than others. So I guess for all you guys, so where do you see pricing being affected during this particular time? Have prices gone up, frozen, or gone down generally? And where do you see it? Right, excluding the fast foods. Right? Oh, Somock, you're on mute. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
That also depend a lot on the part of Vietnam and Thailand food products in general. We can still bring that. It's just as more expensive, of course. It takes more time and more control. What I see here is that since the operator needs to control the cost, and obviously there's less customers, and they have to be leaner and find ways. And we all know that food cost is a big part of our business. so people start to be creative, innovative, in like I say, growing their own stuff, raising their own chicken, and this and that. And I think that helped the quality as well, because I mean, everybody now is doing this organic movement, right? So Laos is also building onto it, and I think in general we see the price being stable, not big increase here in this region. Just because you cannot afford, I mean, to raise price too high because of its the customers have a problem as well, obviously, and so you have to adjust to the market. So from my side, I will see a stabilized pricing strategy in general to be competitive, basically.
Chele, your restaurants always operated among the highest 1% of average checks in the Philippines. So how have you looked at pricing and products in the last year?
Okay, actually, that is a very good question, Merril, because we have been meeting, with, actually, let's say that, there are also sometimes, problems, there are opportunities, okay? In our case, we have a lot of opportunities and we are developing many things. I develop an online site, but I don't like online shopping, but I have no choice, and we had done something called a daily online, but we don't have physical store. Then, we have been meeting with different suppliers and they come to us that say, be careful guys, because the prices on food is going to increase a lot. And we are talking about commodities. Like, for example, in the Philippines, we're talking about the pork. That is the most, Philippines pork is, yes, like Spanish and pork also, is going double price, okay? We're talking about double price. So, chicken is going up, we're talking about very essential things that, are going extremely high. We, of course, when we talk, and I think, Andy was telling before, our market, can afford, to pay a little bit more. In our case, what we offer is an experience, we offer, to people to come here and, relax. So it's not a casual experience, it's more, have a good time, and we take care of you for 2 to 3 hours. I think that, people is willing to pay for that. I think, in the casual market can be more challenged. But definitely, we have right now to be very careful, in terms of the cost of the ingredients and the price that we have to cost, and how are we going to do that? Like Andrej was saying before, no? Like final customer, how are we going to track them with an unbelievable right now a competition of how we are going to get, everybody's trying to get, in the houses and consumer houses, This is something that is very challenged, and it goes back to my first question before. How sustainable is our industry, and how, sensitive of anything that happened? Because one of the hardest one hit by COVID, it was the F&B industry. And how much are our margins, to be able, to get there. So I think, yes, we have to be, understand that prices is going to go up. And for my market in particular, I think, they understand and they can pay. So, but more for the casual and the lower market, I think is something that we are not discussing here. We only see the big picture, the big corporation, but what happened, I think the people who is really affected, is more the small ones who have a small incomings and they are losing their jobs. So that is something that we need to have in consideration.
Yeah, I guess, Andrej, for you guys, right? I mean, you guys are always among the most progressive in terms of variety of concepts from Western to Japanese, right? Do you, even if a lot of restaurants have really have closed, right? do you find competition among those that survive greater competition, or is it less competition because there are less players in the market?
I suppose it really depends on which part of the market we're talking about. And Chele brought up a couple of interesting points related to that. When I think about what will the future look like, even this the medium term, let's say 12 to 18 months, when I think vaccines will start to become more widely available and people have less fear and more confidence to go out. It occurred to me that certainly some of the higher end restaurants where there's a restaurant experience, you cannot replicate that with home. You cannot exchange that experience for just buying food and having it delivered or any other way that you get it to your house. So I actually do think that those types of restaurants, if done well, especially if you have a great outdoor area with an experience, will come back. It's just a matter of holding out until that happens. If I go to the other end of the spectrum, the quick service end, certainly, I've seen lots of reports in the US of certain types that really did well. The wings delivery people, for example, that's just something that lends itself well to COVID and eating at home. On the other hand, there are other operators such as Jollibee, which has had a very hard time dealing with COVID here in the Philippines. Some of their best stores I see are just closed. So they are adapting. They also, I'm sure, had a pretty high break-even point because of their margins. So if they don't hit it, they're not going to try it. So it's not necessarily a slam dunk on that end either. People just have to find what their niche is. I think a few other things I noticed. Places where people go to hang out, like cafe, Starbucks style, the third place as they call it, also did fairly well during this pandemic. People were just seeking places to go and not be in their house for once. And those are the only possible places, especially with outdoor areas. So people really miss that, the informal meetings that you see people have, sort of like what people use hotel lobbies for, that cafe and that meeting business. I think that was resilient. That will continue to move forward after this. A few other ones like the single dish restaurants that also did well. If you're an expert in something and that's all you do, that certainly did better than some other types of food, which doesn't lend itself well to delivery. There are some things that just do better and you will crave more, especially now. People really, at the start of the pandemic, they wanted comfort food. They wanted things that were nostalgic. Sometimes they were into indulgence. It could be clean indulgence. They're looking for alternatives to food that's bad for you. Or they went for Basque cheesecake and did really well with that. So again, it really depends. Some people figured it out and others are just trying to adapt. So sometimes when I understand the market, I realize, oh my gosh, I only understand what about 50% of this market needs, because things surprise me all the time, how things that do well.
True. Kenji, in the States, how have you seen restaurants reposition or reimagine or repivot themselves? So we're not talking QSR, but the restaurants that were like concept restaurants. What have they done to stay in business?
Close a lot of stores, basically go into hibernation. There's whole sectors of our clientele that have been so quiet, and just start to come back. And one that is still very quiet is the hotels. Anything with that travel piece is very difficult. Anything that is large event driven or cinematic, with dining, forget it. Still not happening. But like I said, things start to come back, and it goes state by state over here. And wherever the lockdown and the some of the limitations, if you have 25% occupancy for your restaurant, it's pretty hard to keep open. So you have to decide whether you just want to keep open and keep paying a few people and have, find some way just to go through until things get better. That's what you do. Other people just close. So as far as indoor dining, it's still a conundrum. What exactly is going to happen? Now, what's going to happen is, like, for instance, in this state, they keep the mask mandate for the time being, but they have pulled limitations on occupancy. So people wear masks, go in, but apparently they can fully seat. That's happening right now. So when that happens, there are other places, like one of my clients, as soon as they could open in any way at all, they did it. And they followed the rules. They didn't look back. And they did really well because they're the only place that was open and everyone goes, and they have plenty of outdoor space as well. In LA, if you didn't have over the last few months an outdoor patio, very difficult. large restaurants that had outdoor seating were able to do quite okay. Those outdoor seatings were packed. How is it going to repivot? You know, they have so much money invested into these spaces and are still paying rent. It's not super easy to repivot. A lot of people have tried to like enhance their delivery and takeout services, but it never replaces, you know, people sitting at a table and ordering another bottle of expensive wine. You know what I mean? It's kind of very cut and dried. You order, off you go, and that's it. There's no upselling, not so much upselling. That's what I see.
Okay. Thanks, Kenji. At this point, let's open it up for the viewing public to ask their questions of us.
Thank you very much to Mr. Merril Yu and to our panelists. Before we proceed to the Q&A, here are the house rules once again. Please turn off your video and set your audio to mute. There will be a Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. You may ask your questions using the chat box. It's possible that not all questions will be answered live, but we can email the list of questions and answers to all attendees after the webinar. Speakers, you may now answer the questions of our attendees.
I guess let me ask one question, at least for both Chele and for Andrej. In the next 3 to 6 months, do you think there'll be in terms of overall food and beverage levels, do you see it remaining the same as they are now in March? Do you think it's going to increase?
Andrej?
I can give you a couple of figures here, and maybe this is just specific to our business. We are currently 30 to 50% of normal sales compared to last year. And that had a little Christmas bump, but it sort of went back to where it is now. That's of the restaurants which are open, because we still have a number of our restaurants which are not open. And I imagine we might get some single-digit percentage increases in those. But you know, if you're at 40% and you get an extra 8% next month, we're still sort of inching forward. So I think it will probably look like that for us until, again, vaccine becomes widely available. In other countries, though, it's accelerated faster because they're rolling these things out. So I believe that will be our case for the next 6 months here.
Thanks. Chele?
I think, you know, I'm positive of what's happening in the Philippines. People, you know, I mean, we are almost in quite on a normal situation in many ways. People, you know, is very responsible. You know, sorry, compared with Spain, for example, and other Western countries, I see, you know, and that's why, you know, the cases didn't go up that much, you know. That meaning, you know, that slowly, especially with the vaccines coming, you know, we might generate more positive, you know, numbers and more people in the restaurants. People is, you know, very willing to go out, but at the same time, majority of them, they are very responsible. So I think that's a very good sign and something positive to look at.
Okay, thanks, Chele. Question here from James. Do we foresee the resizing of rentable spaces for restaurants and food chains? More outdoor dining, perhaps?
I think so. I mean, I think Kenji mentioned about the outdoor terrace being popular in LA, but also in Asia. You know, I think in general people enjoy, especially on the cool season, to eat outdoor, and I think that will keep increasing. What we can see is that weddings, for instance, are usually in Asia, indoor weddings, and the past cool season, there are more requests for outdoor wedding venues. People renting large outdoor spaces, using even management to put tents and decorate beautifully, and we see more and more this trend of outdoor weddings being more and more popular.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess that's the other question. Philippines, in particular, was very big on weddings, and and like, everybody that used to be the big cash cow, and that hasn't come back in any significant way, shape, or form. So here's another question from Marlon. What are your insights having online platform that affect the quality of your food and beverage product? Right, insights on online platform that affect the quality of your F&B product. I mean, have you had to downsize the number of menu items you're offering? You know, I guess Andrej's point earlier, I mean, how many items can be transported home where by the time it gets to your home, it retains most of the integrity of the quality of the dish. So do you think that there's been significant changes on menu?
Anything will change, to be like dining in a restaurant. That's it.
Okay, Kenji. Sorry.
For Indonesia, for sure, one of the delivery hacks is that they take a huge cut off the top. So especially the smaller restaurants with very small margins, they can't actually just give that kind of what eventually becomes like a discount. So they definitely do something with the food, and there's definitely a quality. And until that's circumvented or figured out how delivery services can take a little bit less of the pie, particularly in very price sensitive areas, there will definitely be a downgrading. It's just dollars and cents.
Good point. Another question. Do you see an increase in using single-use disposable packaging for restaurants? I guess this would be for in-restaurant dining.
Well, certainly in restaurant, we haven't done any of that single use. People still like to eat on plates. That's there. For things that go home, I guess everybody's been doing that already. And I'm sure a lot of people are not using it single time. They're even saving that for another use later in your house.
Yeah. Actually, I found also when we dine out locally at different restaurants, most of them are not going into single use. I think from a consumer point of view, it's nicer to eat on a real plate and some kind of decent utensils. And you just expect the restaurant to keep the hygiene protocols and make sure that whatever they give you is sanitized accordingly. So, Chele, for your restaurant, in restaurant dining, do you single use?
No.
No.
We use craft plates, and I think it's very important part of the experience, the plates.
Yeah.
Of course, for delivery, we have no choice. And then we talk about sustainability, how much unsustainable is this pandemic, mass, plastic, everything. But I think that is a complete different panel discussion.
Yeah, true. Okay. Yeah.
One thing that people are using single use for is for events, because the meal kits that people now use for online events are here to stay. I think those bookers who figured out, those companies that are still doing these things and ordering, even after the pandemic, I think they will still have these online events to launch their products, and will order from food providers to send to, their 100 attendees. So that will remain, and still that will replace ballrooms and other typical uses where they would do those events.
Funny enough, you should mention that. I found that one of the big Rotary clubs in Cebu, what they do is for their weekly gatherings, instead of having one gathering where they serve lunch to everybody, what they do is they have a caterer deliver it to all the members throughout Cebu.
Yeah.
So they literally said they bring it to you. So you meet online, and then they ring the doorbell, and here's your lunch, by the way, too. Yeah. So that was quite an interesting way of doing things. So
even the in-person events that have happened, they will have those same meal kits. That's the food there, and they will give it to you to bring home. So people are actually not eating at the event, even if it's an in-person event, unlike before. Okay. Part of the swag to bring home.
Cool. Okay. On that note, I wanted to thank our panel. I think you guys certainly have added a lot of value, and actually it's enriching. So I wanted to thank Chele, Kenji, Somock, and Andrej for being part of this today. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Okay, welcome.
ends our Q&A portion. Thank you everyone, and we hope you will join us again later at 11:15 a.m. for our next webinar about the ASEAN tourism industry update.